The last day of peace, the city of Vera Prime glowed like a crown under two suns. Towers of crystal and steel shimmered, their spires singing faint notes as the warm winds moved through them. From above, it looked like a jewel set into the desert. The Virans, masters of peace, had built it over 5,000 years with no war to stain their history. And that peace was about to shatter. Jaren. Locke leaned against the railing of the trade plaza, sweat dripping from his brow. The suns were merciless this close to zenith, but he didn't mind. He'd been stationed on worlds far harsher. Compared to the dry, searing moons of Titan, this place was paradise. The ex-soldier turned mechanic had made a quiet life here. He fixed broken transports, patched up generators, and mended water pumps. Simple work. Quiet work. He told himself he liked it that way. But peace, he knew, never lasted forever. "You are staring again," a soft voice said beside him. Jaren turned. It was Koresh, his closest friend in Vera. She was tall and lithe, her silver-green skin marked with faint bioluminescent lines that pulsed gently when she spoke. Like most Verans, she had a calm, deliberate way about her, but her eyes held storms she rarely let out. Jaren smirked. "Not staring, thinking. You always think when you stare? And you always stare when you are restless." She wasn't wrong. Jaren had the soldier's itch, the sense of waiting for something to happen, even when nothing should. 5,000 years of peace, the Virans claimed. No war, no conquest, no bloodshed. Their historians boasted about it. Their children were raised on stories of diplomacy, unity, and cooperation. But Jaren had lived through the Terran Wars. He had seen starships burning in orbit, soldiers choking in trenches, cities reduced to glass. Peace was fragile. It broke easily. "You don't believe in forever," Koresh said quietly, almost reading his thoughts. Jaren shrugged. "Forever's a long time." The alarms began just after midday. At first, no one reacted. Varans weren't used to alarms meaning danger. To them, alarms meant civic announcements, storms approaching, transport delays, maybe an accident in the lower districts. But this alarm kept rising. A shrill, warbling cry that shook the air and vibrated in Jaren's chest. Then the sky split open. Jaren's eyes snapped upward as a dark shadow grew against the twin suns. Ships, dozens of them. Triangular, jagged, bristling with weapons. They moved in formation, blotting out the light, throwing the city into darkness. The crowd gasped. Whispers turned into shouts. Varans pointed upward, their faces pale with disbelief. "They're not traitors," Jaren muttered. His soldier's instincts screamed. "That's a battle fleet." Koresh's markings flared bright. "Impossible." Who would? The fleet opened fire. Beams of scarlet light lanced down. Towers exploded in showers of molten glass and stone. The peaceful city, untouched for millennia, was torn apart in seconds. Screams erupted. The crowd broke into chaos, Varans fleeing in all directions as explosions rippled across the skyline. Jaren grabbed Koresh's arm and pulled her down as a shockwave tore through the plaza. Crystal shards rained around them. Koresh's voice shook. "But there is no war. There has not been war for 5,000 years. Jaren's jaw tightened. "There is now. The invaders were the Korath Dominion, a species long thought extinct. The Virans had written them off as myths, old enemies vanquished before recorded history. But the Dominion had not died. They had hidden, rebuilt, and sharpened their blades for centuries. And now they had come back to reclaim the stars. Broadcasts blared through every channel. The Dominion's High Marshal declared the end of peace, the fall of Vera, and the beginning of a new age of conquest. Virans wept. Their world had no armies. Their fleets carried food, not weapons. They had no defenses for a war they thought would never come. But one man chuckled sitting in the ruins of a plaza. Blood trickling down his brow, Charonlock let out a low, dark laugh. It wasn't joy. It wasn't mockery. It was the laugh of someone who had always known this day would come. Koresh turned on him, her eyes blazing. You laugh as my people burn? Charon shook his head, wiping his mouth. No. I laugh because I've seen this before. Because your enemies think you're weak. Because they don't know what's coming. What is coming? Humanity. That night, the skies rained fire. Vera burned. Charon and Koresh fled through streets choked with smoke. Viran families huddled in collapsed tunnels, clutching their children, their eyes wide with terror. Soldiers in black Dominion armor marched through the wreckage, dragging prisoners in chains. Charon had seen occupations before. He knew the signs. The Dominion wasn't just conquering. They were breaking the spirit of the Varans, making them kneel. Koresh stumbled beside him, coughing. We cannot fight them. We do not know how. Charon stopped, gripping her shoulders. Then you learn. Fast, or you die. Her markings dimmed in despair. We are not like you. We are not warriors. Charon's voice hardened. You don't need to be warriors. You need to survive. And I can teach you. Above them, Dominion warships prowled the skies like predators. The peace of 5,000 years was over. And somewhere in the ashes, a spark had been lit. The Dominion made their first mistake the next morning. They underestimated humanity. Charon wasn't the only human on Vera. A few hundred traders, workers, and settlers lived scattered across the cities, quiet and unnoticed. The Dominion thought nothing of them. Weak, isolated, harmless. But humanity had a long memory. While the Varans cowered, Charon and the others began to move. Quietly, in shadows. Gathering supplies. Building networks. Finding survivors. Whispering one message across the broken streets. Peace is over. Resistance begins. And as Dominion banners rose over Vera's towers, humanity merely chuckled in the dark, because war was their element. Asterisk sparks in the ashes. The Dominion did not waste time. By dawn, they had seized the heart of Vera Prime. Soldiers in black exosuits marched through the streets, their boots pounding in eerie rhythm. Their helmets were sharp, faceless, glowing red at the visors. Their rifles crackled with plasma coils, humming with restrained fury. Flags of the Koreth Dominion, black and crimson, marked with a burning sigil hung from shattered towers. Loudspeakers barked orders in a harsh, guttural tone. Those who resisted were executed on the spot. Those who obeyed were herded into camps. The Varans had no concept of camps. They were builders, dreamers, singers, not prisoners. Their wide, luminous eyes stared in shock as they were forced behind energy fences. Children wailed. The old collapsed in despair. For the first time in 5,000 years, they knew chains. Charonlock crouched in the shadows of a collapsed archway, watching. His jaw was set, his hand gripping the butt of the old sidearm he kept hidden. It wasn't much an old Terran-issue pistol, scavenged years ago, but it was something. Beside him, Koresh trembled. Her markings pulsed weakly, betraying her fear. They are. So many, she whispered. Charon kept his eyes on the patrols. Numbers aren't everything. I've seen armies fall to fewer. You talk like war is a trade, you know. He glanced at her. It is. Koresh studied him for a long moment. You are not afraid. Asterisk wrong. His voice was flat. I'm always afraid. Fear's what keeps you alive. But I know one thing. What? He bared his teeth in something that wasn't quite a smile. These bastards bleed. By nightfall, Charon had made contact. Word had spread quietly, carefully among the humans scattered across. Vera Prime, old soldiers, traders, engineers, medics. no more than a few hundred in total, but each one carried the same look Jaren did. The look of someone who had been through fire before and knew how to walk into it again. They met in ruins, in basements, in broken tunnels. They spoke in whispers, exchanged maps drawn in dust, passed around salvaged comms. Jaren found himself at the center of it. Not because he wanted to be, but because someone had to. His voice carried weight. His eyes told truths the others recognized. "We can't fight them head on," he said to the circle of faces lit by a single flickering lamp. "They've got numbers, ships, weapons we can't match." But they made one mistake. A scarred woman named Rika frowned. What mistake? They think this world is already theirs. They think fear will keep everyone quiet. He looked around the circle, meeting each gaze. Fear doesn't last forever. Not when you push people too far. Rika's lips twitched in a grim smile. "So you're saying, hit them where it hurts." "Exactly. Cut supply lines. Sabotage patrols. Spread confusion. Make them bleed resources until holding this planet costs them more than it's worth." "And the Varens?" another asked. Jaren glanced at Koresh, who had insisted on coming. She sat silently, her eyes wide, listening to humans speak of war like it was breathing. "They'll fight," Jaren said softly. "They just don't know it yet." 2 nights later, the first strike came. A Dominion patrol marched through the eastern quarter, dragging chained Varen captives. Their boots echoed off broken walls. One soldier sneered at the prisoners, shoving them with the butt of his rifle. From the shadows above, Jaren watched. He counted the squad. 10 soldiers. Heavy armor. Plasma rifles. But their formation was sloppy too confident. They weren't expecting trouble. Asterisk. Jaren waited until the lead soldier stepped beneath the arch. Then he dropped the charge. A homemade explosive, cobbled together from scrap and fuel cells, tumbled into their path. The blast ripped the street apart. 3 soldiers went down instantly. The rest stumbled, shouting in confusion. And that's when the humans struck. Rika and 2 others opened fire from the rooftops, their stolen rifles spitting blue plasma. Dominion soldiers fell, their armor sparking and failing. Jaren leapt from cover, his pistol barking. He moved with soldier's precision, every shot placed with cold efficiency. Koresh was there too terrified, but holding a scavenged blade. When a Dominion soldier lunged for her, she ducked under the swing and drove the blade into the gap beneath his arm. To her shock, he fell. The captives cried out as their chains were cut. Confusion turned to hope. For the first time since the invasion, Varens saw their captors bleed. The humans melted back into the ruins before reinforcements arrived. By dawn, rumors spread across the camps. The Dominion were not invincible. High Marshal Zeros of the Dominion was not amused. From the command deck of his flagship, he watched reports stream in. Attacks in the eastern quarter. Supply depots raided. Communications disrupted. His jaw clenched, mandibles twitching with fury. How? He snarled. How can primitives do this? His aide bowed low. It is not the Varens, High Marshal. It is the humans. Humans? Zyro scoffed. They are scattered vermin, traders, laborers, insignificant. The aide hesitated. They fight differently, High Marshal. They do not meet us openly. They strike, vanish, and strike again. Zyro's red eyes narrowed. He turned toward the burning planet below. Then we will burn the vermin out. For Koresh, everything changed after that night she had killed. The weight of it crushed her. Varens did not kill. They did not even know how to hold blades. Her people were builders, singers, artists. She had always believed violence destroyed the soul. But as she sat with Jaren in the ruins, the screams of the dying still echoing in her mind. She saw something else in him. Not joy, not pride, but necessity. "You do this without hesitation," she said quietly. He looked at her, eyes shadowed. "You think I don't feel it? Every face stays with you. Every one. But if you hesitate, you don't survive. And if you don't survive, the people you're trying to protect don't either." Koresh lowered her gaze. "I fear what this will make of us." Sharon's hand rested on her shoulder. "War doesn't make you. It shows you. You get to decide what stays after." She looked up at him, and for the first time, she understood why humans laughed in the face of war. Not because they enjoyed it, but because they had already faced it 1,000 times and still endured. And she realized maybe her people could endure. The Dominion escalated quickly. Entire districts were set ablaze. Captives were executed publicly to send a message. Camps were tightened. Patrols tripled. But the more they tightened their grip, the more the resistance grew. Whispers turned into songs. Songs turned into shouts. Varens who had never raised a hand in anger began to sabotage machines, smuggle food, hide fugitives. They learned quickly from their human allies. For the first time in 5 millennia, the Virens began to fight. Then came the ambush. Jaren led a small strike team into the industrial quarter, aiming to cripple a Dominion fuel depot. The raid went too smoothly. Guards were few, resistance light. They planted charges and prepared to withdraw. That's when the sky lit up with Dominion. DROPSHIPS. Floodlights cut through the night. Dozens of soldiers poured in from every direction. "Trap!" Rika shouted. Blaster fire rained down. Jaren returned fire, dragging Koresh behind cover as the team scattered. Explosions ripped across the depot, throwing shadows into chaos. The humans fought like demons, but they were outnumbered 10-1. One by one, they were cut down or captured. Koresh clung to Jaren, her eyes wide with terror. "We cannot escape." Jaren's jaw clenched as he emptied his pistol into the oncoming swarm. "Then we make damn sure they remember we were here." A Dominion officer strode forward, massive and armored, his voice booming. "Surrender, human. You and your kind are finished." Jaren raised his pistol empty. He met the officer's gaze, unflinching, and the ground beneath them shook. A deep rumble echoed through the night. Dominion soldiers faltered, looking around in confusion. Dust rained from broken walls. Koresh whispered, "What is that?" From the dark horizon, a silhouette rose, massive, towering. Its engines roared like thunder. A human warship long thought absent from this world descended through the smoke. For the first time since the invasion began, the Dominion soldiers hesitated. The Colossus awakens. Dominion soldiers froze as the night sky split apart. Engines roared like thunder. Shadows stretched long and trembling across the ruins. And from the smoke, descending like some colossal phantom, came a warship. It wasn't sleek like Dominion vessels. It wasn't ornate like Viren craft. No, this thing was brutal, industrial, built like a hammer meant to smash through stars. Its armored hull was scarred with battles long past. Its plating bore the faded crest of old Earth, a blue and white emblem with a fractured globe. Across its side, letters still burned faintly in the glow of re-entry. UHS Resolute, a ship of humanity's lost fleets. Koresh's breath caught. She had never seen such a thing. Viren ships were graceful, woven from crystal and light. But this was a fortress in the sky. Guns protruded from every angle. Its engines bellowed with raw power. What is that?" she whispered, her markings flickering in awe. Jaren's eyes narrowed, his voice low. "That is home." The Dominion officer barked orders, his voice breaking with unease. "Fire! Bring it down!" Cannons from the ground lit up, lancing the sky with scarlet beams. Explosions rippled against the warship's hull. For a moment, it seemed like the Colossus might fall. Then the Resolute answered. Turrets rotated, and with a deafening roar, they spat streams of plasma and railgun fire. Entire blocks vanished in firestorms. Dominion tanks were torn apart like toys. Dropships exploded midair, raining molten wreckage. The Dominion line shattered. Soldiers scattered like insects under a boot. Jaren grabbed Koresh's hand. "This is our chance. Move!" They sprinted through the chaos, weaving between collapsing walls and burning wreckage. Above them, the warship loomed, its guns blazing with relentless fury. A kung crackled in Jaren's ear. A voice, crisp, commanding, human. "Ground team, identify. This is Captain Adrienne Voss of the UHS Resolute. Respond immediately." Jaren yanked his old cum from his belt. "This is Jaren Locke. Resistance ground team. You sure as hell picked the right time to show up." There was a pause. Then the captain's voice returned, sharp with recognition. "Locke? As in Sergeant Locke of the 19th Terran Marines?" Jaren grimaced. "Retired. A long time ago." "Well, Sergeant, looks like you're back on duty." The Resolute's arrival wasn't chance. Hidden beneath Vera's deserts for decades, it had slept in silence. A relic of the old wars, abandoned after humanity withdrew from frontier space. Its crew had gone into cryosleep, waiting for a signal that never came, until the Dominion's invasion awoke automated systems deep underground. The warship stirred, its engines roared back to life, and its eye reactivated the sleepers. Now, humanity had a warship in play. And with it, hope. The reunion was not simple. Jaren, Koresh, and what remained of the strike team were extracted by drop pod and hauled into the belly of the Resolute. The hangar was vast, lined with fighters and gunships under repair. Engineers in worn but functional uniforms moved frantically, preparing machines that hadn't flown in centuries. The air smelled of oil, sweat, and ozone. Koresh stumbled as she stepped onto the deck. Her eyes darted everywhere, overwhelmed. To her, this was madness. Controlled chaos, humans shouting orders, sparks flying, steel ringing. Jaren, though. He walked like he was home. A woman strode forward, her uniform patched, but her bearing sharp. Captain Adrienne Voss. Her dark hair was tied back, her face lined with years of command. "Sergeant Locke," she said, her voice level but edged with tension. "Didn't think I'd see you again." "You're not the only one," Jaren replied. Her eyes flicked to Koresh, lingering on the glowing markings across her skin. "And this?" "She's with me." Koresh flinched under the scrutiny, but Jaren's tone left no room for doubt. Captain Voss studied him for a long moment and gave a curt nod. "Fine, but know this, Locke, we're in no shape for a war. Half my systems are down. Weapons are limited. Supplies are thin. We're holding together with duct tape and grit." Jaren smirked faintly. "Then it's a good thing humanity's always been good at fighting, while half broken." The next hours blurred. Briefings. Maps projected in shimmering light. Reports of Dominion occupation spreading across the planet. The Resolute had the firepower to strike, but not to sustain. It was a sledgehammer, not a scalpel. They needed more than brute force. They needed allies. "The Varens won't fight," one officer argued. "They're soft. 5,000 years of peace has made them useless." Koresh stood, her voice trembling but firm. "We are not useless. We are untested. Teach us, and we will stand." The room went silent. Dozens of human eyes turned to her. Some doubtful, some curious. Jaren broke the silence. "She's right. They don't need to be soldiers. They just need to believe they can fight back. And with this ship above their heads, they will. Voss crossed her arms, studying Koresh. Then she looked at Jaren. You trust her? With my life. The captain exhaled slowly. Then that's enough for me. The resistance shifted overnight. Where before they had fought with scraps, now they had the shadow of the Resolute at their backs. Raids became bolder. Sabotage more daring. Dominion patrols began to vanish without explanation. And the Virans, they changed. Under human guidance, they learned to fight in their own way. They weren't strong, but they were fast, agile, able to slip through ruins unseen. They weren't soldiers, but they were builders. They could craft traps, repair machines, and improvise weapons from nothing. Koresh herself became a bridge between the two peoples. She trained with humans, then returned to teach her own people. Slowly, painfully, the Virans began to rise. And the Dominion noticed. High Marshal Zeros stared at the newest reports, his fury boiling. This is no rabble, he hissed. This is organized, coordinated. His aide shifted nervously. The humans, High Marshal. They have awakened something in the Varans. A ship. A great ship has risen. Zyros slammed a clawed fist into the console. Then we will crush it. Gather the fleet. I will tear this Resolute apart with my own claws if I must. His eyes burned with hatred. He had underestimated humanity. He would not do so again. The storm came at dawn. Koresh was with Jaren on the command deck, watching the suns rise over the battered horizon. For a brief moment, the world looked peaceful again. Then the scanners lit up. Contacts. An officer shouted. Dozens of ships. No, hundreds. The Dominion fleet is converging. The view screen filled with crimson light as enemy vessels swarmed from orbit, blotting out the sky. Koresh's throat tightened. There are too many. Jaren's hand tightened on the railing, his eyes cold. Good. She turned to him, stunned. Good. He nodded slowly. Because now we've got all their attention. And that means they're not hunting the people on the ground. The deck shuddered as the first salvo struck, shaking the ship. Klaxons wailed. Crew scrambled. The Resolute's guns roared to life, answering in kind. The battle had begun. And humanity. Chuckled. Asterisk fire against the sky. The Resolute groaned under the weight of war. Every gun roared. Every engine screamed. The ship's hull shuddered as wave after wave of Dominion fire slammed into it. Red lances streaked through the heavens, cutting across the twin suns, burning trails in the sky. From the surface, Virans and humans alike looked up to see fire painting their dawn. For them, it was a sight both terrifying and miraculous. A single ship standing against an armada. On the command deck, Captain Voss barked orders like a war drum. Port shields failing. Redirect auxiliary power. Gun deck 3 is down. Then get it back up, damn it. Sparks rained from overhead as consoles overloaded. The crew worked with grim efficiency. No panic, just fire in their eyes. They had been waiting centuries for this fight. Koresh clung to a railing, struggling to steady herself. She had never seen battle at this scale. The noise was overwhelming. Alarms, cannon fire, the groan of steel bending under pressure. She wanted to scream, but when she looked at the humans, she saw no fear. Only determination. And Jaren. He stood beside Captain Voss, his stance calm, his voice sharp. Don't let them box you in, he warned. Keep moving. Force them to split their fire. Voss gave him a sharp look. You're supposed to be retired. He smirked. Guess the galaxy didn't get the memo. The Dominion fleet pressed hard. Their ships were sleek predators, faster and more agile than the old human warship. Dozens circled the Resolute, pouring fire into its shields. Yet the Colossus struck back with brutal force. Railguns spat slugs the size of transports, tearing enemy vessels apart in single shots. Plasma batteries raked across formations, scattering them in panic. Every hit the Resolute landed reminded the Dominion of something they had forgotten. Humanity was built for war. Below, the Resistance watched from the ruins. Koresh's people huddled in camps, staring upward as the battle raged above their heads. For the first time, they did not tremble. They whispered. They hoped. Children pointed at the sky, their eyes shining. Elders, long broken, straightened their backs. Songs began to rise, soft at first, then louder. War songs had never existed in Varan culture, but now something new was being born. On the Resolute, damage mounted. Starboard batteries offline. Casualties reported on Deck 7. We've lost maneuvering thrusters. The ship shook violently as another barrage tore across its flank. Flames burst from ruptured conduits. A section of the hull vented atmosphere, sucking debris into the void. Captain Voss gritted her teeth. We can't take this much longer. Jaren leaned over the tactical display, his finger jabbing at the map. Then stopped trying to outgun them. Change the field. Voss's eyes narrowed. Explain. Pull them into the atmosphere. Force them low. They'll lose formation in the turbulence, and their weapons won't track as well. The helmsman hesitated. Captain, if we take a ship this size into the lower atmosphere, the stress on the hull will tear us apart, Voss finished grimly. Jaren's gaze was steady. Or it'll tear them apart first. Silence hung in the air. Then Voss gave a sharp nod. Helm, take us down. The Resolute descended like a falling star, its massive frame cut through the atmosphere, trailing fire. Clouds ripped apart around it. Shockwaves flattened what remained of Vera Prime's towers. The Dominion followed, pouring after it like a swarm of hornets. Their ships fired wildly, their shots cutting fiery streaks across the sky. Asterisk, and just as Jaren predicted, they began to falter. The turbulence ripped formations apart. Precision weapons missed their marks. Sleek hulls, built for space, buckled against atmospheric drag. The Resolute turned, its guns blazing. Enemy ships exploded in thunderous bursts, their wreckage raining down onto the burning city. For the first time, the Dominion fleet reeled, but victory came at a cost. The ship screamed in protest as its hull strained against the atmosphere. Plates warped. Beams snapped. Fires spread uncontrollably. In the engineering bay, crews worked desperately to keep the engines online. Coolant leaked. Reactors ran hot. It was like trying to hold back a collapsing mountain. Rika's voice crackled over comms from the Resistance below. Whatever you're doing up there, it's working. Dominion patrols are in chaos. They're pulling back to regroup. Jaren exhaled. Good. Keep hitting them while they're off balance. We'll give you as much cover as we can. But then the scanner screamed. New contact. An officer shouted. Something big. The view screen shifted, and there it was. The Dominion's flagship. It descended from orbit like a blade forged from darkness. Larger than anything the Virans had ever seen. Black armor bristling with weapons. Its silhouette blotted out the suns, casting the battlefield into shadow. High Marshal Zyros had come personally. The flagship opened. Fire. A single blast tore across the sky, slamming into the Resolute. The shields flared, then collapsed. Metal screamed as decks buckled. Hundreds were thrown from their stations. Koresh was hurled against the wall, her vision blurring. Through the chaos, she saw Jaren dragging a wounded crewman to safety, his face set with iron resolve. Lock! Voss shouted. We can't match that monster. Jaren's eyes locked on the flagship. He saw the Dominion's arrogance in its size, its weapons, its command, and he knew what had to be done. Then we don't try to match it, he growled. We cut the head off the snake. Voss's eyes widened. You're suggesting a boarding action? Damn right I am. Koresh staggered forward, her voice breaking. That is suicide. Jaren turned to her, his gaze softening just for a moment. No, it's war. And war's never won by playing safe. Preparations began immediately. A strike team was assembled. The toughest, sharpest survivors the Resolute had. Humans in patched armor, armed with scavenged and salvaged weapons. Koresh insisted on joining. Voss objected. Jaren objected harder. You're not a soldier, he told her. She lifted her chin. Neither are my people. But they will fight if I fight. They need to see that. Jaren's jaw tightened. He hated it. But he couldn't deny the truth. Finally, he pressed a blade into her hand, a human combat knife, long but sharp. Stay close to me, he said quietly. Drop pods screamed from the Resolute's hangars, streaking across the sky. Dominion fire tore through the air, but the pods weaved, juked, burning through clouds. Jaren gripped his seat. Koresh strapped in beside him, her knuckles wide around the blade. Target, enemy flagship hangar bay, came the pilot's voice. Brace for breach in 3, 2. The pod slammed into steel. Explosions ripped through the corridor as its doors blew open. The strike team poured out, guns blazing. Dominion soldiers fell in heaps, their armor smoking. Jaren surged forward, Koresh at his side, as alarms howled across the flagship. They were inside the beast. Asterisk. High Marshal Zeros stood on his command deck, towering over his officers. His red eyes burned as reports poured in. Humans, he snarled. They dare board my ship? He drew his blade, a massive, serrated weapon that pulsed with crimson energy. Then I will gut them myself. In the corridors of the flagship, war erupted. Humans fought with brutal efficiency, clearing room after room, leaving trails of fallen Dominion soldiers in their wake. Koresh moved like a shadow, ducking and weaving, her blade striking where Jaren guided her. But the deeper they went, the thicker the resistance grew. Doors sealed. Traps sprung. Dominion forces surged in endless waves, and as the strike team pressed forward, losses mounted. They were bleeding out in the belly of a monster. And ahead, in the heart of the flagship, Zeros waded ** into the serpent's den. This Dominion flagship was a fortress of nightmares. Corridors stretched like veins through a steel beast, lit by crimson emergency lights. The air smelled of ozone and blood. Alarm klaxons echoed endlessly, a heartbeat of war. The strike team moved fast. Boots clanged against deck plating. Weapons spat fire, carving through Dominion soldiers who poured from every hatch. Each hallway became a kill zone. Each corner another ambush. Jaren Locke led from the front. His pulse rifle barked in steady bursts, every shot precise, efficient. He didn't waste ammo. He didn't waste motion. Behind him, Koresh stayed close, clutching her knife in one hand and a captured Dominion pistol in the other. Her hands shook, but her eyes burned with resolve. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for every Viran who had died screaming under Dominion whips. First breach came at a junction. A blast door slammed down, cutting the team in two. Jaren's half found themselves pinned against the bulkhead as turrets dropped from the ceiling, spitting plasma. Cover! Jaren shouted. He shoved Koresh into an alcove, just as the air filled with fire. One of the Marines, Vargas, sprinted forward with explosives. He slid under the fire, slapped a charge on the turret base, and rolled. The explosion shook the corridor. Both turrets fell in smoking heaps. Door! Jaren barked. Another Marine set a plasma torch to the blast door, cutting through while the rest held the line. Dominion soldiers charged in waves, shrieking war cries. It was chaos, smoke, Blood, screams. Koresh fired wildly, each shot punching holes in armored chests. She gasped for air, her lungs burning, but she kept moving. When the door finally gave way, they pushed through, leaving behind two fallen comrades who would never rise again. The flagship's architecture was alien but functional. Towering halls, ribbed walls, floors humming with energy conduits. Everything pulsed faintly, like the ship itself was alive. Their destination was the central command spire, the heart of the beast, where Zyros waited. But every step closer drew heavier resistance. Ambushes in ventilation shafts. Shielded drones. Choke points lined with heavy weapons dot the strike team bled numbers. 15 became 12. 12 became 9. Each loss weighed on Jaren like iron, but he never faltered. His voice was steel, his orders sharp. Keep moving. Don't look back. Every second we stall, they regroup. At one junction, Koresh nearly broke. A Dominion soldier, massive, scaled, his armor smeared with ash, cornered her. He swung a blade longer than her arm, roaring. She froze. The blade came down. Jaren's rifle barked. The soldier fell. A hole burned through his throat. Jaren seized her arm, pulling her to her feet. His eyes burned into hers. Listen to me. Fear doesn't keep you alive. Focus does. Keep your blade up. Keep moving. She nodded, swallowing her terror. I won't falter. Again, his hand lingered for a heartbeat. Before he turned back into the firestorm, the Dominion began, deploying heavier units. Juggernauts, armored giants with mounted cannons, stomped into the corridors, each one a walking fortress. Plasma bolts lit the halls like lightning. The Marines scrambled for cover, firing everything they had. Concentrate fire. Jaren shouted. The Juggernaut shrugged off bullets. A Marine leapt forward with grenades, only to be cut down mid-stride. Koresh saw him fall. Something in her snapped. She darted out from cover, sprinting low and fast, weaving through the storm of fire. The Juggernaut turned toward her, cannon glowing asterisk. She dove under its swing, jammed her knife into the joint behind its knee, and fired her pistol point-blank into its visor. The giant staggered. Jaren's rifle finished the job, slamming burst after burst into its head until it crashed to the floor with a seismic thud. For a moment, silence. Then the Marines cheered. Koresh gasped for air. Blood spattered across her face, her knife dripping. Her hands still shook, but this time not from fear. Jaren's eyes met hers. For the first time, he allowed himself a grim smile. You're learning fast. By the time they neared the command spire, only 6 remained. Exhaustion gnawed at them. Armor was scorched. Ammunition dwindled. Every step felt heavier, but the spire loomed ahead, a towering chamber sealed by massive gates, glowing with Dominion runes. This is it, Jaren said. His voice was calm, steady, but Koresh heard the weight in it. They breached the gates with their last charges. The blast shook the deck. Smoke billowed into the vast chamber beyond. And there he was, High Marshal Zyros. He stood tall on the dais, his crimson blade humming with energy, his armor black and jagged like obsidian. His eyes glowed red in the shadows. Around him, Dominion elites fanned out, armored guards bristling with weapons. Zyros raised his blade, his voice carrying across the chamber like thunder. Humans, Fervin, you dare crawl into my sanctum? Jaren stepped forward, rifle raised. His team spread out behind him, forming a crescent. We're not here to crawl, Jaren said coldly. We're here to end this. Zyros laughed, a deep, booming sound that shook the walls. Then come and die. The chamber erupted into chaos. Gunfire thundered. Plasma streaked. Blades clashed. The strike team surged forward, tearing into the guards. Koresh fought at Jaren's side, ducking, weaving, striking fast. But even as they cut down the guards, Zeros himself stepped forward, his presence like a storm. He raised his blade, its crimson light bathing the chamber, and Jarenlok raised his rifle, eyes locked on the monster who had enslaved worlds. The two leaders stared at each other across the battlefield, the galaxy narrowing to this single moment. Jaren's voice cut through the chaos. Asterisk, Zyros. The High Marshal turned, lips curling into a snarl. Jaren dropped his rifle, drawing a combat blade instead. Face me. Asterisk. Duel of wills, the chamber burned with chaos. Marines clashed with Dominion elites. Blades against rifles, fists against claws. Plasma streaks lit the air in bursts of blue and red. Bodies fell, metal rang, blood spattered across the runes etched into the walls, but none of it mattered. All eyes turned toward the center, where Jarenlok stepped forward, his combat blade glinting in the crimson glow, and High Marshal Zeros loomed like a storm in black armor, his greatsword humming with energy. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Jaren moved first. A feint to the left, a slash upward. Zyros parried with ease, sparks flying as steel kissed plasma. The impact nearly knocked Jaren back, but he rolled, coming up low and striking for the knee. Zyros countered, his blade arcing down like a thunderbolt. The deck cracked under the strike as Jaren leapt aside. Impressive, Zyros growled. For a creature of dirt and blood, Jaren spat blood, circling. Funny, that's all it took to bleed your soldiers dry. They clashed again, fast, brutal, raw. Asterisk, Jaren's blade flashed, striking for the gaps in Zyros' armor. Each blow was blocked or turned aside by the Marshal's monstrous strength. Zeros swung in wide arcs, every strike meant to kill outright. The sound of their duel rose above the battle, steel on plasma, grunt against roar, will against will. Koresh fought nearby, ducking between Dominion guards. Her pistol clicked empty. She drew her knife instead, striking quick and desperate. Her lungs burned, her limbs ached, but she refused to fall. Every time her eyes flicked to Jaren, her heart pounded. He fought like no Varen ever had, reckless yet precise, brutal yet focused, and she realized something. He wasn't fighting just to win. He was fighting to buy time. For them. For her, the duel dragged on. Sweat poured from Jaren's brow. Blood trickled down his arm from a shallow cut. His chest heaved. Every strike rattled his bones. Zeros, by contrast, moved like a beast unfazed. His armor smoked with scorches, but his eyes burned brighter with every clash. Asterisk, you cannot win, he thundered, hammering Jaren's blade aside. I have conquered 100 worlds. I have crushed fleets beneath my heel. You are a remnant of a violent species, clinging to old scars. Jaren's arm shook as he blocked another strike. His teeth ground together. Yeah, he hissed. But we're really damn good at scars. He twisted, parried low, and drove his boot into Zyra's chest. The High Marshal staggered a half-step, more surprised than hurt. Jaren pounced, slashing upward. His blade grazed Zyro's cheek, drawing a line of black blood. The chamber froze for half a breath. The great High Marshal had been cut. Asterisk. Zyros roared, his voice shaking the walls. He swung with fury now, each strike faster, heavier, driven by rage. Jaren blocked, ducked, rolled, but the sheer force was overwhelming. A strike slammed into his side. Pain lanced through his ribs. He staggered, coughing blood. His blade nearly slipped from his grasp. Koresh screamed his name. Jaren dropped to one knee, gasping. His vision swam. Zyros loomed above him, blade raised for the killing blow. The High Marshal's voice was cold thunder. Your kind's time is over. Peace is ended. War belongs to the Dominion alone. The blade descended at the last instant. Jaren rolled, The blade cracked the deck where his head had been. He surged up, slamming his knife into Zyro's shoulder joint. The High Marshal bellowed in rage, backhanding him across the chamber. Jaren slammed into the wall, coughing blood, barely conscious. His knife was still lodged in Zyro's armor, sparking. Zyros tore it free, snapping it in two. You bleed, human. You break. You end. Koresh's body moved before her mind did. She dove between Jaren and Zyros. Knife raised. The Marshal's blade swung down. She blocked it with both arms crossed, the impact driving her to her knees. Sparks showered. Her markings flared bright, her body trembling under the weight of his strength. You will not take him. She screamed. Zyros sneered. Another insect. But in that moment, Jaren's hand closed around the fallen half of his broken knife. He surged forward, jamming the shard into the back of Zyros' knee. The Marshal roared, stumbling. Koresh seized the chance, driving her own blade into the crack. In his chest plate, black blood spurted. The giant staggered backward, fury blazing in his eyes. You dare, he snarled, slamming a fist into Koresh. She flew back, crashing into the deck with a cry. Koresh! Jaren roared, stumbling toward her. She coughed blood, barely moving, but her eyes locked on his. Finish. This. The chamber fell silent. The Marines and Dominion elites circled, watching. The entire battle seemed to fade into the background. It was down to two, Jaren and Zyros. The human stood, broken blade in hand, ribs shattered, blood streaming down his face. The Marshal loomed, his armor cracked, black blood dripping, his greatsword still humming with death. They circled, the deck beneath them slick with blood. Zyros raised his blade, snarling. This ends now. Jaren raised his shard, voice hoarse but steady. Yeah, he said. It does. They charged. Blades clashed. Sparks exploded. The chamber roared with the sound of their final duel. Asterisk. Humanity's Thunder the Chamber was a storm of steel and fire. Jaren and Zyros circled, bloodied, battered, each strike of their blades sending sparks across the walls. Koresh lay nearby, groaning, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. The other strike team members were scattered, wounded or struggling to continue. Every muscle in Jaren's body screamed. Pain radiated from shattered ribs, a swollen jaw, and bleeding arms. But he didn't hesitate. He couldn't. Zyro's greatsword swung with terrifying speed. Each strike could crush a human, could crush a world. But Jaren had learned patience in war. He let the blade come, timed his movements, studied the gaps. This was not just a duel of strength. It was a duel of wits, of endurance, of the human spirit itself. Koresh watched, her hand clutching the shard of a fallen blade. You can do it, she whispered, though her voice trembled. I know you can. Jaren's eyes met hers, burning through the haze of pain. We do this together, he said. Her markings flared, pulsing like light caught in water. She dragged herself to her knees, trying to rise, trying to be part of the fight in her own way. In that moment, something shifted in Zyros. He had underestimated them, both human and Viren. Their defiance, their courage, the way they refused to bow under impossible odds. And it enraged him. Jaren saw the opening. Zyros swung, overextending in fury. Jaren ducked, rolling under the swing, planting his broken blade into the joint at the Marshal's hip. Sparks and black blood erupted. Zyros stumbled, roar turning into a hiss of pain. Now, Koresh! Jaren shouted. She rose, her legs trembling, knife in hand. She darted forward, landing a precise strike along the exposed side of the Marshal's armor. The hum of his blade faltered. Zyros roared, staggering. Jaren surged, pressing the attack. Blade against blade, strike after strike. each move chipping away at the monstrous creature's armor and resolve. Then, with a final, precise thrust, Jaren drove his shard deep into the marshal's chest. Zyro's eyes widened, a snarl frozen on his lips. The great sword fell. Sparks arced from the floor as his body collapsed. Silence filled the chamber. The tyrant was dead. Koresh fell against Jaren, exhausted but alive. "We did it," she whispered, her voice breaking. Jaren exhaled, lowering himself beside her. Bloodied, battered, broken, but victorious. "Yeah," he rasped. "We did it." Above them, alarms blared. The Dominion fleet outside faltered as the flagship's AI systems collapsed. The Resolute's crew fought quickly to redirect power, stabilizing the ship's descent. Across Vera Prime, resistance forces saw the Dominion's chains crumble. Camps were abandoned, prisoners freed. Virans emerged from hiding, their eyes wide with hope and disbelief. The humans and Virans had done the impossible. Outside, the skies were filled with fire and smoke, but it was not a hopeless sight. The Resolute rose above the flagship debris, its weapons still blazing to cover retreating resistance forces. Dominion ships, leaderless and disoriented, were picked off one by one. Fighters fell in flames. Capital ships crashed into mountains or each other, broken and helpless. Koresh stood beside Jaren on the bridge, looking out over the battlefield. "They're gone?" she asked. Jaren shook his head. "Not all of them. But the rest? They'll think twice before trying this again." She leaned into him, exhaustion washing over her. "Humans, you're insane." He chuckled weakly. "Yeah, but it works." The people of Vera Prime began to rebuild. Where ruins had stood, hands, both human and Veran, labored together. Fires were extinguished. Walls were repaired. Families reunited. The first songs of triumph, tempered with sorrow for the lost, rose across the plains and cities. Koresh moved among her people, teaching them what they had learned from humans, how to improvise, how to fight if needed, how to protect what they loved. And they learned something else. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was standing up even when afraid. Jaren, Koresh, and the surviving crew of the Resolute watched the sunset over the horizon. The skies were tinged with red and gold, a reminder of what had been lost and what had been gained. Got Voss approached Jaren, her expression softened by relief and pride. "You did it." "Locke," she said simply. "Yeah," he muttered, staring at the horizon. "But this isn't over." "It never is." Koresh rested her hand on his shoulder. "Then we'll face it together." Jaren looked at her, at the humans around them, at the Virans who were no longer afraid. A slow smile crept across his face. "Yeah," he said. "Together." And somewhere in the shadows of the galaxy, other forces watched. Rumors of humanity's resurgence, of a race that could laugh at war and endure anything, began to spread. The Dominion was shattered, but the cosmos was wide, and threats waited in dark corners. Yet one truth had been made clear. Wherever humans and their allies stood, the impossible could become reality. And that was a message the universe would never forget. The 5,000-year peace had ended, but humanity merely chuckled.